Hey guys, so I tutor and teach for a living, and I've been doing this for more than 10 years. I've personally taken more than 60 SATs and more than 40 ACTs. Today I'm going to tell you guys with some of the scams that go on with these other tutoring companies and test prep companies. This is stuff that they just don't want you to know. Many tutoring and test prep companies deceive and lie to unsuspecting students and parents every single day. 1. Making up score increases. You'll see amazing score results on their websites, but a lot of these are just made up and unverified. The second thing they'll do is have students come in and take a diagnostic test. These diagnostic tests are harder than the real exam and give a much lower starting score. Then later on, when the student goes on and takes the real exam, it looks like they improved a lot. This situation has gotten so out of hand that a lot of lawsuits were filed and companies were told to remove score improvement statistics off their website. Looking at score improvements to evaluate how good a company is not reliable anyways. If a student is scoring lower, they have a lot more points they can go, whereas a student who's scoring higher can't improve as much. For example, if one student is scoring 1200, there are another 400 points left to go. But if a student is scoring 1400 already, they only have another 200 points that they can possibly go. So it really depends on where the student is starting off at. Second of all, it depends on how hard the students are working. You can have two kids who start off at 1200. One kid is working hard, goes to the course, does all the practice tests. That kid's going to improve a lot more than another kid who has a 1200, who sits there in class, doesn't do anything, doesn't do any homework. That kid's not going to improve. The last issue with looking at score improvements is that you could have two kids scoring at 1200. One kid has already gone through a course, has had tons of tutoring, and hit 1200, and that's a maximum that student is going to reach. The second student is at 1200 but has never had any tutoring and still has a way to go and can possibly hit 1300 or 1400. Problem number 2. The most appalling deception is in the advertisement of the tutors and instructors themselves. Every website you look at will boast top instructors, elite teachers, best tutors, Ivy League graduates, perfect test takers, PhD professors, thrown together with buzzwords such as best practices, proven methodologies, guaranteed results. What's the unbelievable reality? These so-called expert tutors have very little teaching experience and only work a few hours a week. This lack of teaching experience results in confusing or wrong explanations that students can't understand. Most of these instructors are essentially just talking textbooks, reciting from an instructor's manual, or give students handouts to read on their own. Many of them cannot solve all the problems and thus are unable to provide any explanation. And you know what the most shocking fact is? Most of these tutors and instructors have never taken the SAT or ACT themselves, or did so many years ago. How can you possibly teach something that you've never taken? That's a good question. It should come as no surprise when you hear students complain, I didn't learn a thing. It was a total waste of my time. So let's say a tutoring or test prep company did find that amazing high school student who scored a 2400 on the old SAT, 1600 on the new SAT, or 36 on the ACT, perfect score. Well, guess what? It is impossible for any person, no matter how smart or brilliant, even someone who is scoring 2400 on the older SAT, 1600 on the current SAT, or 36 on the ACT, to have the time to prepare and review what is required to properly teach the SAT or ACT just by working part-time 3 to 5 hours a week. The reality is that when tutoring and test prep companies put up job listings looking for new tutors and instructors, there's usually no requirement for teaching experience because that is actually very hard to find. What they look for is stuff like enjoys working with high school students, likes helping people, wants to make a difference. Realize these tutoring and test prep companies are in business to make money. Therefore, they're trying to find the cheapest possible workers they can. If there was actually a tutor or instructor that was that good and qualified, would they be working for a tutoring or test prep company for $15 or $20 an hour? No way. They'd be in business for themselves. Which brings us to the next problem, fake SATs and ACTs. A lot of these companies will give students practice tests, but these are fake tests. They might look like the real tests, but they're very different. And the knowledge, concepts, and problem-solving methods are actually very different as well. So you can't practice using fake tests. You have to use the real exams. As an example, some of these fake practice tests will test concepts that do not appear on the actual exam. Sure, you can learn how to do it, but it's going to be a waste of time because it will never show up. Which brings me to the next problem. A lot of these test prep and tutoring companies will review concepts that do not even appear on the test. And again, sure, you can learn these things, but you will never be tested on them. Standardized tests such as the SAT and ACT will test very specific concepts. Unless you sit there and have the time to go through 10, 20, or even 30 exams yourself, you won't see all the different concepts and things being tested on these exams. Classic bad test prep would have you believe that simple test-taking strategies, tips, and tricks are enough to improve scores, as if it was that easy. Real score improvement comes from learning the right way to solve every problem in question, not by strategies, tips, tricks, and chance. Which brings us to the next problem. A lot of these test prep and tutoring companies will actually teach incorrect test-taking methods, strategies, tips, and tricks. These incorrect methods will actually bring down test scores. For years, test prep and tutoring companies have perpetuated myths with test taking. One classic example is the so-called test-taking strategy for reading. They tell students to skim through the passage quickly and not waste time reading, then go straight to the questions. This absolutely does not work. Some tutoring and test prep companies even advise their students to not look for the actual grammar errors and just rely on their ear. Listen for what sounds wrong. Sure, that's good advice. Oh, and the best? There are numerous TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook videos that tell students, if you're not sure, this is the letter that you should pick. No, there is not one letter that shows up more than the others, guys. I'm sorry to tell you that. As if these wrong strategies and techniques weren't bad enough, these tutoring companies also provide incorrect explanations and solutions to the problems. Believe it or not, there is actually a right way to solve every question and problem. Ironically, there is one lesson that tutoring and test prep companies are very good at teaching. Parents learn that they can waste hundreds or even thousands of dollars, and students can sacrifice weeks and months of valuable time sitting through SAT and ACT tutoring and courses with little or no results. At best, students will only improve a little bit. But over the years, I've actually seen many students who got worse scores as a result of these courses and classes. So I hope you've gained some insight into how test prep and tutoring companies really work behind the scenes. Tutoring is not a business, but a lot of people think they can just start up a tutoring business as if they're starting up a coffee shop or some sort of restaurant. Unfortunately, a lot of the tutoring and test prep out there is so bad, you're actually better off just buying a book, saving thousands of dollars, and studying on your own. Even better yet, you can watch my YouTube videos here for free. All I ask in return is that if you thought these were helpful, you like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Thank you for watching.